The sun was just starting to sink behind the jagged peaks of the northern mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. In the quiet town below, the hum of machinery and the occasional chatter of townsfolk filled the air. Among them moved a man whose presence was often overlooked, a veteran electrician named Rowan. His hands were rough, calloused from years of handling wires, circuits, and machines, but they were steady and precise. Rowan did not seek fame or wealth. He only wanted to fix what was broken and keep the lights of the city glowing. That evening, Rowan was finishing a routine repair on an old power line that stretched across the outskirts of the city. His task seemed simple, almost mundane. But tonight, something felt different. There was a strange whistling sound in the wind, a subtle vibration that made his skin tingle. He paused for a moment, listening. At first, he thought it was just the wind whistling through the mountain crevices. But then he heard it. A soft, frightened cry that did not belong to any animal he knew. Curiosity gnawed at him. Rowan was not the kind of man to ignore danger, but he was also not the type to turn away from someone or something in need. He carefully descended from the pole, securing his tools and taking a small lantern from his bag. The cry came again, more distinct this time, filled with fear and confusion. It seemed to be coming from the cliffs above. Rowan moved cautiously toward the source. The path was narrow, jagged rocks cutting into the soles of his boots. The cries grew louder and more desperate. As he climbed higher, the wind seemed to grow stronger, tugging at his clothes and making him stumble. But he pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity and an inexplicable sense of responsibility. Finally, he reached a small ledge that jutted out from the mountain face. There, nestled among twisted roots and jagged stones, were two tiny dragon cubs. Their scales shimmered in the dim light of the setting sun, one deep emerald and the other a soft golden hue. Their wings were too small to fly, and their eyes, wide with fear, met Rowan's with a mix of hope and terror. Smoke curled gently from their nostrils as they hissed softly, unsure whether this new visitor was friend or foe. Rowan froze for a moment. He had heard legends of dragons, creatures of fire and might, but he had never imagined he would come face to face with real ones. His heart raced, not from fear but from awe. The cubs were so small, so vulnerable, yet there was a strength in their gaze, a spark that hinted at the incredible power they would one day wield. "Hey, it's okay," Rowan whispered gently, holding out his hands. He knew better than to rush forward. Dragons, even young ones, could react unpredictably. The cubs hissed again, their small teeth glinting. But Rowan's calm demeanor seemed to reach them. Slowly, one of the cubs, a golden one, took a tentative step closer. Rowan scanned the area. The ledge was narrow, and one wrong move could send them all tumbling down the mountainside. He noticed the roots that trapped the cubs' tiny claws and the sharp stones that scraped their scales. With careful movements, he freed the golden cub first, lifting it gently. Trembled but did not struggle. The emerald cub watched, its large eyes following every motion. Then came the moment Rowan felt his first real sense of danger. From the shadow of a nearby cliff, he saw movement. Figures were descending silently, cloaked and armed. His mind raced, the Emperor's guards. Dragons were sacred in the Empire, and taking them without permission was forbidden. Anyone who interfered could be punished severely, even executed. Rowan's mind worked quickly. He could not leave the cubs behind, yet the guards were closing in. Thinking fast, he used his lantern to cast a flickering light, creating shadows that confused the approaching figures. He whispered soothingly to the cubs as he guided them toward a small crevice in the rocks, a hidden nook just big enough to shelter them. The cubs huddled close, trusting him instinctively. As the guards passed by, Rowan held his breath, staying as still as the rocks themselves. The air was thick with tension. One guard paused, seemingly sensing something, but after a moment, they continued their patrol. Rowan exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The Emperor would not ignore missing dragon cubs for long. The night grew colder, and Rowan knew he had to move quickly. Carrying the golden cub in one arm, he wrapped the emerald one in a thick cloth and tucked it into his backpack. Every step down the mountain was careful, every shadow a potential threat. The city lights below glimmered like a promise of safety, but he also knew the streets were not free from danger. By the time he reached his small workshop on the edge of town, the cubs were quiet, exhausted from the ordeal. Rowan set them down gently on a pile of soft blankets. They curled up together, trusting him in a way that only the truly innocent could. He watched them for a moment, feeling an unusual warmth in his chest. Something inside him shifted. This was no longer just a duty. He felt a connection, a bond forming that went beyond words. Rowan knew he had made a choice. He had saved these cubs, and now he must protect them at all costs. The weight of responsibility pressed on his shoulders, but he felt ready. His life of fixing circuits and mending wires had prepared him for this in ways he did not yet understand. Outside, the wind howled through the streets, carrying the faint sounds of the city at night. Somewhere in the distance, the Emperor's guards would be searching. But for now, in this quiet workshop, the cubs were safe. Their tiny snores filled the air, and Rowan allowed himself a rare smile. He knew that soon the real challenges would begin, but for now they had a moment of peace. And somewhere, deep within the shadows of the Empire, a pair of eyes watched. The Emperor had learned of the dragon cub's disappearance, and whispers of the mysterious rescuer were beginning to spread. Rowan had acted bravely, but the world he knew was about to change forever. The next days would test his courage, his skills, and his heart. For tonight, though, he simply watched the cubs sleep, marveling at the tiny creatures that had unexpectedly entered his life. Little did he know, the bond he had just formed would shape the destiny of the Empire itself. The night was dark, and the streets of the city were quiet. Only the occasional lantern flickered in the wind, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. Inside his small workshop, Rowan watched the two dragon cubs as they slept, their tiny chests rising and falling. He felt a strange mix of pride and fear. Pride for having saved them, but fear of what might come next. He knew the Emperor's guards would soon learn that the cubs were missing, and they would not stop until they found them. The golden cub stirred first, letting out a soft whimper. Its sister, the emerald one, opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the dim light. Rowan approached them quietly. "Don't worry," he whispered. "You're safe for now." But even as he spoke, he knew the cub's safety was only temporary. The city could not hide them forever. Rowan began preparing a plan. He needed to find a safer place, somewhere the cubs could grow without danger, away from the prying eyes of the Empire. He gathered blankets, rope, and supplies, packing everything into a sturdy bag. The cubs, sensing movement, sniffed curiously. The golden one nuzzled his hand, showing a trust that warmed Rowan's heart. But danger was closer than he imagined. Outside, a pair of cloaked figures moved silently, following the faint trail the cubs had left from the mountains. Their eyes glimmered in the darkness, sharp and watchful. They were scouts of the Emperor, skilled in tracking anything unusual, and dragons were considered priceless treasures or dangerous threats. Rowan did not know he was being watched. He slung the bag over his shoulder and carefully lifted the cubs inside, making sure they were secure. They hissed softly, not from fear, but from discomfort at being moved. Rowan whispered words of comfort as he stepped out into the night, moving cautiously through the shadows of the city streets. The journey was slow. Every sound, the flap of a curtain, the scurrying of rats, the creak of a door, made him flinch. The cubs, though small, could sense danger. The golden one puffed a tiny flame, a warning that startled a stray cat nearby. Rowan quickly hushed them, realizing that even a small flame could attract unwanted attention. Halfway through the city, Rowan stopped at an old bridge that spanned a small river. He looked around and noticed movement in the distance. Two figures, cloaked and careful, moving as if they knew exactly where he was heading. His heart pounded. He knew he could not outrun them. The streets were too narrow, too exposed. He needed a plan. Rowan remembered the abandoned tunnels beneath the city. They were old, forgotten by most, but he had explored them many times in his youth. They could lead him out of sight, give him a chance to lose anyone following. With careful steps, he guided the cubs toward the entrance hidden under a pile of crates. The cubs were hesitant at first, but they trusted him. The golden cub stepped forward, then the emerald one followed, their small claws clicking softly on the stone floor. As they descended into the tunnel, the city above seemed to vanish. The sound of footsteps on the cobblestones faded, replaced by the damp echoes of the underground passage. The air was cold and musty, but it was safe for now. Rowan allowed himself a small breath of relief. He set the cubs down, letting them explore the space. Their eyes shone with wonder, reflecting the dim torchlight he had placed carefully along the walls. But the danger was far from over. The cloaked scouts had discovered the tunnel entrance. From above, they signaled to each other, preparing to descend. Rowan realized he could not face them head-on. The cubs would be in grave danger. He needed to use his wits, his experience, to protect them. Rowan searched the tunnel quickly. He found old crates, broken machinery, and loose rocks. A plan formed in his mind. He would create traps and distractions, using the environment to his advantage. He tied rope between pillars, stacked crates to block certain paths, and arranged debris so that it would fall and make noise if disturbed. Every move was calculated to slow down anyone who dared follow. As he worked, the cubs watched with curiosity. The golden cub, feeling safe enough, blew tiny puffs of smoke into the air, practicing control of its fiery breath. The emerald cub tried to flap its small wings, hopping from crate to crate. Rowan smiled despite the tension. Their innocence reminded him why he risked so much. Suddenly, a shadow appeared at the tunnel entrance. The first scout had descended, moving cautiously but with determination. Rowan froze, realizing the moment had come. He whispered to the cubs, "Stay close. Do exactly what I say." The scout stepped forward, unaware of the traps. As his foot touched a loose rock, it tumbled noisily, drawing attention. Rowan pressed a button on a small device he had crafted. A flash of light and a sudden clatter echoed through the tunnel. The scout stumbled, shouting as he tried to regain balance. "Now!" Rowan whispered. The cubs instinctively reacted. The golden one shot a tiny burst of flame, not enough to harm, but enough to scare the scout. The emerald cub hissed, a sharp sound that echoed like a warning. The scout froze, eyes wide in shock, and quickly retreated toward the entrance, thinking he had underestimated the creatures. Rowan knew this was only a temporary victory. The Emperor would not send just one scout. More would come, stronger, smarter, and faster. He needed a permanent safe place for the cubs. He decided to move them to the old forest beyond the northern hills, where no human dared go. The cubs, sensing the urgency, climbed into his bag without protest. The journey through the tunnel was long and exhausting. Every step required focus, every corner a potential ambush. Rowan relied on his knowledge of the city's underground passages, guiding the cubs through twists and turns, avoiding pitfalls and sudden drops. Outside, the wind howled against the mountains, as if urging them forward. Finally, they emerged near the edge of the northern forest. The trees stood tall and silent, ancient guardians of secrets and shadows. Rowan set the cubs down, letting them sniff the fresh air and the scent of pine and earth. They seemed to understand they were free for now. As Rowan watched, a sense of triumph mixed with worry. The cubs were safe, but the Emperor's reach was long, and he would not forget these dragons. The forest offered them hiding, but it also presented new challenges: wild animals, harsh weather, and the unknown magic of the land itself. The golden cub nuzzled Rowan's hand, and the emerald one hopped onto a low branch, trying to balance. He could not help but smile. They were alive, and that was all that mattered for now. But deep in his heart, Rowan knew that the real test had just begun. From the shadows of the forest, two pairs of glowing eyes watched him. The Emperor's scouts had followed the trail, persistent as ever. Rowan felt a chill. This time, he would need more than traps and quick thinking. He would need courage, skill, and a plan that could outsmart the Empire itself. As night deepened, Rowan sat by a small fire, the cubs curling up beside him. He whispered stories of courage and survival, hoping to teach them trust and patience. Their tiny breaths warmed his hands, and for a moment, he allowed himself to believe that they could survive anything, together. Yet the distant sound of hooves echoed through the trees. The Emperor's men were coming, and they would not stop until they found the dragons. Rowan's heart tightened. He had rescued them from immediate danger, but now a larger, more dangerous storm was approaching. The forest might be their sanctuary, but it would also be the stage for a battle that could change everything. The cubs stirred, sensing the tension. Their innocent eyes met Rowan's, and he felt a wave of determination. He would not let them fall into the hands of those who sought to control or harm them. He had made a choice, and he would face whatever came next. The night whispered its secrets to the forest, carrying with it the faintest hint of fire and shadow. Somewhere, the Emperor's scouts were moving closer, unaware of the clever tricks and traps Rowan had left behind. The game had begun, and Rowan knew that the survival of the dragon cubs depended on his courage, skill, and wits. The forest was alive with the whisper of leaves and the distant cry of nocturnal creatures. Rowan crouched behind a thick oak, the dragon cubs safely nestled in his backpack. The golden cub peeked out, its tiny eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight, while the emerald one twitched its wings nervously. Rowan had hoped that the forest would offer them safety, a place far from the Emperor's reach. But deep down, he knew the Empire's influence stretched farther than anyone dared imagine. Far away, in the Emperor's grand palace, word of the missing dragon cubs had spread quickly. The Emperor, a man known for his sharp mind and strict laws, frowned as he read the reports brought to him by his scouts. 2 dragon cubs had vanished from the northern mountains, rescued by an unknown figure. Who could dare defy the Empire in such a way? Find them, the Emperor said quietly, his voice cold but calm. No one must harm them, but they must be returned. Whoever holds them is not just breaking the law, they are challenging my will. The scouts bowed, their eyes wide with fear. The Emperor was known for his unpredictability. He could reward or punish in ways that left people silent. Yet there was a strange curiosity in his gaze as he added, "And bring me the rescuer. I wish to see this person with my own eyes." Back in the forest, Rowan felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had only intended to rescue the cubs, to keep them safe for a while. He had never imagined that the Emperor himself would take interest. He moved cautiously, avoiding open paths and keeping low. Every snapping twig, every rustle of leaves, made him glance around, heart racing. The cubs sensed the tension too. The golden one let out a tiny puff of smoke, practicing control while warning Rowan that they were alert. The emerald one flapped its wings nervously, brushing against his arm as if to say, "We trust you, but something is coming." Rowan found a small clearing and set up a temporary camp. He fed the cubs scraps of dried meat he had packed and let them explore the surrounding underbrush. They were curious but cautious, sticking close to him. He spoke softly, "We need to rest. Tomorrow we move deeper into the forest. We'll find a place where no one can reach us." As he spoke, a distant sound reached his ears, a faint hoofbeat, soft but steady. Rowan froze. His mind raced. Could the Emperor's scouts have found him? Or was it something else? He listened carefully. The sound grew closer, echoing through the trees. Suddenly, movement appeared between the trunks. 2 figures in dark cloaks, approaching slowly. Rowan's heart pounded. He grabbed a stick and prepared to defend the cubs. But the figures stopped at the edge of the clearing. One stepped forward, removing its hood. It was a young scout, wide-eyed and trembling. You saved them," the scout whispered, pointing toward the cubs. "I was sent to bring them back. But I see now, you did not harm them." Rowan studied the scout carefully. "Go back," he said firmly. "Tell your master the cubs are safe and that I will not let them be taken." The scout shook his head. "I cannot disobey orders, but I do not wish to hurt them either." He glanced at the cubs, awe in his eyes. I will report that they are alive and unharmed, but I fear the Emperor himself will come. He wants to see the one who dared rescue them. Rowan's jaw tightened. The Emperor's involvement would change everything. He had no choice but to prepare for confrontation, but he also knew he could not abandon the cubs. They had trusted him, and he would protect them no matter the cost. The night grew colder, and Rowan built a small fire to keep the cubs warm. They huddled close, their tiny bodies trembling slightly. The golden cub let out a tiny hiss, almost like a question. Rowan laughed softly. I know. You're scared. But we can't run forever. We need to be smart. The Emperor may come, but he may also surprise us. Rowan spent the night thinking, planning their next move. He knew the forest offered hiding spots, but it was also full of unknown dangers. Wild animals, sudden storms, or magical creatures that roamed in secret could threaten the cubs. And if the Emperor came himself, Rowan would need every ounce of skill and courage he possessed to keep them safe. As dawn approached, the forest was bathed in pale light. Mist clung to the trees, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. The cubs had slept fitfully, and now they stretched their wings and yawned, ready for another day of adventure or danger. Rowan packed their supplies and prepared to move deeper into the forest. The further they went, the safer they would be from the city and the Emperor's immediate reach. But he could not shake the feeling that eyes were always watching. Somewhere, someone was tracking them, waiting for the right moment to strike. He guided the cubs carefully, teaching them to stay low and quiet, moving like shadows through the underbrush. Every step required caution. Every sound could be a warning. The cubs seemed to understand. They followed his lead without hesitation. Hours passed, and the forest grew denser. Rowan found a small, hidden glade surrounded by towering trees and thick vines. It was perfect, a natural fortress where the cubs could rest and explore safely. He set them down, letting them roam the edges while he watched, ready to intervene at any sign of danger. The golden cub breathed small puffs of smoke, playing with the leaves, while the emerald cub attempted to climb a low tree, flapping its wings in delight. Rowan smiled, momentarily forgetting the tension. Their innocence reminded him why he risked everything. But the peace did not last. In the distance, faint flashes of light appeared through the trees, scouts sent by the Emperor, moving cautiously but steadily toward their location. Rowan's heart sank. He had hoped to stay hidden, but the Empire's reach was too great. He quickly whispered instructions to the cubs. Stay hidden. Follow my lead. Do not make a sound. They obeyed, slipping behind roots and rocks, their small bodies invisible among the foliage. Rowan moved silently, using his knowledge of the terrain to position himself between the cubs and the approaching scouts. The scouts paused, scanning the forest carefully. They could sense something unusual, an energy in the air, a presence they could not see clearly. Rowan held his breath, knowing that one mistake could expose the cubs and him. Then, as the scouts advanced, the cubs reacted instinctively. The golden one exhaled a tiny flame, not enough to harm, but enough to startle the intruders. The emerald one hissed sharply, a sound that echoed through the trees. The scouts froze, startled and uncertain. Rowan seized the moment, guiding the cubs further into the forest, deeper into safety. The scouts, frustrated and confused, eventually retreated, reporting only shadows and strange noises. But Rowan knew the Emperor would not be satisfied with second-hand reports. The next move would come from the highest authority himself. As night fell again, Rowan and the cubs settled in the hidden glade. He built a small fire and whispered stories to them, keeping their spirits calm. He knew that tomorrow, their journey would become even more dangerous. The Emperor's curiosity had been piqued, and the Empire would stop at nothing to reclaim the dragon cubs. Rowan looked at the cubs, their eyes shining with trust and innocence. We've come this far, he whispered, but the real test is ahead. Whatever happens, we face it together. And somewhere beyond the trees, in the shadows, the Emperor's eyes watched, cold, calculating, and ready to intervene. The game was no longer just about survival. It was about courage, loyalty, and the courage to stand against the empire itself. The sun rose over the dense forest, casting beams of light that danced between the trees. Rowan had spent a restless night in the hidden glade, the dragon cubs curled beside him, their warmth comforting yet a constant reminder of the responsibility he had taken on. The golden cub blinked sleepily, curling its wings, while the emerald cub stretched and yawned, tiny claws scraping the earth. Rowan knew the forest could not protect them forever. The Emperor's reach was long and determined, and sooner or later, someone would come looking. He decided it was time to prepare for what might come next. He gathered the cubs, feeding them some dried meat and whispering softly, "Stay close. We cannot afford mistakes now." Meanwhile, far away in the capital, the Emperor sat in his grand chamber, pondering the news brought by his scouts. They had failed to capture the cubs, but their reports intrigued him. The cubs had survived, guided by a mysterious rescuer, a simple electrician who had dared defy the Empire. "Bring him to me," the Emperor commanded, his eyes narrowing. "I want to see this man. Let us see if courage is born, or if it is merely foolishness." Back in the forest, Rowan moved cautiously along a narrow path, avoiding open spaces and keeping the cubs hidden beneath thick foliage. He taught them simple tricks: how to stay silent, how to sense danger, and how to follow his lead without hesitation. The cubs learned quickly, their intelligence and instinct surprising even Rowan. As he paused to rest, a rustle in the bushes caught his attention. His heart leapt, hand instinctively reaching for a branch. From the shadows emerged a figure, an Emperor's scout, young and nervous, but holding no weapons. He bowed slightly, fear evident in his posture. You are the rescuer?" the scout whispered, glancing at the cubs. "I have been sent to retrieve them, but I see you mean no harm. The Emperor, he wishes to see you." Rowan's jaw tightened. He had feared this moment. The Emperor's appearance would change everything. But he also knew the cub's safety depended on his next actions. "Tell him," Rowan said quietly, "that the cubs are unharmed. If he wishes to see me, I will come, but only if the cubs remain safe." The scout hesitated, then nodded. "I will speak truthfully, but the Emperor, he is not one to be ignored. He will come himself." Rowan sighed. There was no turning back now. He had to prepare, not just for his own safety, but for the safety of the cubs, who had already begun to trust him as their protector. Later that day, a grand carriage arrived at the edge of the forest, carried by black steeds and guarded by the Emperor's elite soldiers. The Emperor stepped out, his presence commanding attention even in the vast wilderness. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the forest floor until they landed on Rowan and the cubs. Rowan stepped forward, holding his head high. The cubs peeked out from the shadows of his coat, their tiny eyes reflecting curiosity and caution. The Emperor's expression softened slightly, not with warmth, but with interest. "You have saved them," the Emperor said quietly, more to himself than to Rowan. "From danger, from those who would harm them." Rowan bowed slightly. "They were in need. I could not leave them to suffer. They are young, innocent, and defenseless." The Emperor studied him for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, a smile touched his lips. "Few have the courage to act without thought of reward. You risked your life for creatures that could have brought you nothing but trouble. Tell me, why?" Rowan's voice was steady, honest. "Because it was the right thing to do. I could not ignore their suffering." For a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the cubs were still, sensing the weight of the moment. Then the Emperor knelt slightly, careful not to startle the creatures. He extended a hand, and the golden cub approached cautiously, sniffing it before nuzzling gently. The emerald cub followed, curious yet wary. Rowan watched in surprise. The Emperor, known for his strictness and command, was showing an unusual understanding, a respect for the lives he had rescued. "You have shown me something I had almost forgotten," the Emperor said quietly. "Even in this empire, courage and compassion exist in the most unexpected forms. But the peace was not absolute. Whispers of rebellion had already begun in the capital. Some feared the dragon's power, others sought to use them for their own gain. The emperor's curiosity was genuine, yet the world around him was dangerous. Rowan knew the cubs would always be at risk if they returned to the city. "Can they survive here?" the emperor asked, glancing around the glade. "Or will their safety always be in question?" Rowan considered his words carefully. They can survive, but only if they are protected. Not just from harm, but from those who would take advantage of them. I will keep them safe, as long as I can. The emperor's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Perhaps there is a way to ensure their safety, and to honor your courage as well. You have risked everything for them. Such bravery is rare. He rose, looking down at the cubs, then at Rowan. "I shall not punish you. On the contrary, you will be rewarded. But you must understand, these cubs are more than mere creatures. Their power and their bond to this world are rare. They are the future." Rowan felt a shiver run down his spine. The emperor was speaking of powers he did not fully understand, but he understood the weight of responsibility now heavier than ever. As the day faded into evening, the emperor left the glade, promising to return. His respect for Rowan was evident, but the unspoken warning lingered. The world would watch, and not all who watched meant well. Rowan knew the cubs' journey had only begun, and the safety of these young dragons would depend not only on his courage, but also on the choices of those who wielded power. The cubs nestled close to Rowan as he watched the sunset. Their tiny breaths were steady, yet he knew that danger could return at any moment. The emperor had seen their innocence and the courage of their rescuer, but there were others, ambitious men and hidden threats, who would not hesitate to strike. Rowan whispered softly, "We've learned much today. The emperor respects us. But the world beyond this forest is still full of danger. We must be ready for whatever comes next." The cubs stirred, nuzzling against him, as if they understood the gravity of his words. For now they were safe, and that was all that mattered. But Rowan knew the forest was only a temporary haven. Soon, they would face trials that would test their courage, their loyalty, and the bond they shared. And somewhere, in the distant halls of the palace, the emperor watched and considered. The humble rescuer had shown bravery beyond measure, and the cubs had revealed a spark that could change the empire's destiny. Secrets had been unveiled today, but the story was far from over. The forest was quiet, but an uneasy tension hung in the air. Rowan had spent days teaching the cubs how to stay hidden, how to sense danger, and how to trust him completely. The golden cub had begun to control its tiny bursts of flame, while the emerald one flapped its wings with more confidence each day. Yet, despite the lessons and precautions, Rowan knew the empire would not wait forever. Late that afternoon, as the sunlight filtered through the dense trees, a shadow moved silently among the trunks. Rowan froze, scanning the undergrowth. His heart pounded. He had taught the cubs to remain calm, but instinctively they pressed closer to him. A figure emerged, a cloaked intruder, moving with deadly precision. This was no ordinary scout. Rowan could tell by the quiet confidence and sharp eyes. Someone had come to take the cubs by force. He had anticipated this, but facing it so close to home sent a shiver down his spine. "Stay behind me," Rowan whispered to the cubs. "Do exactly as I say." The intruder paused, observing them, and then spoke with a voice both smooth and commanding. "Step aside, Electrician. Those cubs belong to the Empire. You cannot protect them." Rowan clenched his fists. He had no weapons, only his wits, his courage, and the trust of the cubs. "They are not yours to take," he replied firmly. "You will not harm them." The intruder smiled faintly, drawing a curved dagger. "We shall see." Rowan's mind raced. He noticed the terrain. Loose rocks, fallen branches, and uneven ground. He could use these to his advantage. Carefully, he guided the cubs to a narrow section of the forest, where the intruder would have limited mobility. The golden cub let out a tiny flame, just enough to light the area and startle the intruder without causing harm. The emerald cub hissed sharply, its wings flaring slightly. The intruder's eyes widened, surprised by the cub's instinctive defense. Rowan seized the moment. He kicked a loose rock, sending it tumbling toward the intruder. The sound echoed through the trees, disorienting him. The cubs followed instinctively, creating small distractions that allowed Rowan to maneuver around the intruder. But the intruder was skilled and quick. The dagger slashed the air, missing Rowan by inches. Rowan ducked, rolling behind a tree. The cubs flanked him from either side, their tiny bodies moving with agility that amazed even him. The golden cub puffed a small ring of smoke, confusing the intruder's vision, while the emerald cub let out a screech that echoed like a warning. Rowan realized he could not simply evade the intruder. He needed a strategy to turn the tide. He scanned the ground and noticed a pile of dry leaves and branches. With careful movements, he guided the intruder toward it. Just as the intruder lunged forward, Rowan tripped a hidden rope, sending the pile tumbling. Leaves and branches scattered, startling the intruder and giving Rowan a chance to push him backward. The intruder regained balance quickly and lunged again, but this time the cubs acted together. The golden cub released a controlled burst of flame, and the emerald one leapt onto a low branch, knocking a small rock down onto the intruder's shoulder. The intruder hissed in pain, momentarily stunned by the unexpected teamwork. Rowan saw his opportunity. Using his strength and speed, he tackled the intruder, pinning him to the ground. "Leave now," Rowan growled, "or face the consequences." The intruder struggled, but the cub's small displays of power and Rowan's determination were enough to make him hesitate. Finally, he glared at Rowan one last time and vanished into the forest shadows, realizing he could not overcome the combination of human cunning and dragon instinct. Rowan exhaled heavily, his heart still racing. He knelt beside the cubs, checking to ensure they were unharmed. "You did well," he said softly. "We did well, but we cannot stay here. More will come." Just as he spoke, a low rumble rolled through the trees. The cubs stiffened, their eyes widening. Rowan turned and saw a group of the Emperor's elite soldiers approaching, led by none other than the Emperor himself. His presence was imposing, but there was a flicker of curiosity and respect in his eyes. Rowan took a deep breath. The real challenge was only beginning. The Emperor's guards surrounded them, but the Emperor held up a hand, signaling them to stop. "I have watched your courage," he said, his voice calm yet commanding. "And I have seen your care for these cubs. Few would risk everything for creatures so small and yet so powerful." Rowan bowed slightly. "I only did what was right," he said. "They are innocent. They deserve safety." The Emperor studied him, then turned his gaze to the cubs. "Indeed, they are remarkable, and so is your courage. But you must understand, the world beyond this forest is not as forgiving. There are those who would harm them for their own gain." Rowan nodded. "I understand. That is why I cannot let them fall into anyone's hands, not even the Empire's, if it means they are at risk." The Emperor's expression softened slightly. "You have shown bravery, intelligence, and loyalty, qualities that are rare in this world. I see now that these cubs are in the care of someone who truly understands their worth. I shall not punish you. On the contrary," he paused, letting the weight of his words sink in, "you will be honored." Rowan's eyes widened. "Honored?" he whispered. "Yes," the Emperor replied, "for your courage and for your wisdom. The cub's safety is paramount, and it seems you are the only one who can ensure it. I recognize that now." The cubs stirred, sensing the calm in the Emperor's tone. The golden cub exhaled a small, contented flame, while the emerald cub flapped its wings, almost as if acknowledging the Emperor's approval. Yet, even in this moment of respect, Rowan knew the danger was not over. Others in the Empire and beyond would still seek to control the dragon's power. He would need to continue to be vigilant, to protect the cubs from threats both seen and unseen. The Emperor finally turned to leave, but not before offering one last word. "You have proven that true strength lies not in power alone, but in courage and compassion. Keep them safe, Rowan. The Empire, and perhaps the future, depends on it." As the Emperor's carriage disappeared into the distance, Rowan looked at the cubs, feeling a mix of relief and determination. They had survived their first real test, but he knew there would be more challenges ahead. He whispered softly, "We've made it through this one, but the real journey is just beginning. We must be ready for whatever comes next." The cubs nuzzled against him, tiny bodies warm and trusting. Rowan smiled, a rare moment of peace amidst the tension. He knew the forest offered temporary refuge, but the world beyond held trials that would test their courage, intelligence, and the bond they shared. For now, though, they had survived. Together, they had faced danger, outsmarted skilled intruders, and earned the respect of the Emperor himself. The ultimate test had strengthened their bond and prepared them for the challenges that lay ahead. And somewhere in the shadows, others were watching, waiting for the next opportunity. The story was far from over. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a golden glow over the northern forest. Rowan stood at the edge of the glade, the two dragon cubs by his side. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and earth, but a quiet tension lingered. Though the Emperor had recognized his courage, Rowan knew that their journey was far from over. The cubs were safe for now, but the world beyond the forest was full of unknown dangers. The golden cub stretched its small wings, testing the air, while the emerald cub hopped from one rock to another, playful yet alert. Rowan knelt beside them, whispering words of encouragement. "You've been brave," he said softly, "but we must stay vigilant. The future will demand even more courage from all of us." From the distance, the thundering of hooves grew louder. Rowan stiffened. The Emperor's presence was unmistakable. His grand carriage, escorted by his elite guards, approached steadily. Yet this time, the Emperor rode alone, not as a ruler demanding authority, but as an observer, intrigued by the bond between a man and the creatures he had saved. As the Emperor dismounted, the forest fell into an almost sacred silence. Birds paused their songs, and even the wind seemed to hush, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Rowan stood tall, the cubs close, their small bodies radiating a quiet power. "You have done what few would dare," the Emperor said, his voice calm yet commanding. "You have faced danger without fear, protected what is innocent, and shown a courage that goes beyond mere strength. And yet, it is your wisdom, your care, and your heart that impress me most." Rowan bowed deeply. "I only did what was right. They are living beings. They deserve to be safe." The Emperor's eyes softened as he looked at the cubs. The golden one curled its tiny wings around itself, while the emerald one blinked curiously at the figure before them. The Emperor extended a hand, and the cubs, sensing no threat, approached cautiously. The golden cub nuzzled it gently, smoke curling softly from its nostrils. The emerald cub flapped its wings, brushing lightly against his robe. For the first time, the Emperor's stern expression relaxed. He took a step back, surveying the scene. "Few have the courage to act selflessly," he said. "Few have the wisdom to protect what cannot yet defend itself. You, Rowan, are extraordinary. Your bravery honors not only yourself but the Empire as well." Rowan felt a mix of pride and humility. He had only acted out of instinct, out of a sense of right and wrong. Yet the Emperor's words carried weight, and he realized that his actions had changed the perception of what it meant to be truly courageous. The cubs, sensing the calm in the air, played gently around Rowan's feet. The golden one puffed a tiny flame into the morning air, creating a small spark that danced and shimmered. The emerald one leapt into the air, its wings catching the light as it practiced flying in short bursts. Rowan smiled, marveling at their growth and potential. The Emperor observed in silence, clearly impressed. Then he spoke again, softer this time. "Rowan, I wish to entrust you with a rare honor. You shall be their guardian, officially recognized by the Empire. Their safety, their training, and their well-being will be your responsibility. No one may interfere without your permission." Rowan's eyes widened. "Guardian?" he asked, barely believing it. "Yes," the Emperor replied. "Not all are worthy of such a trust. You have proven yourself. Your courage, skill, and heart are unmatched. The dragons will thrive under your guidance, and the Empire will watch in silent awe at the bond you have forged." The cubs stirred again, as if understanding the weight of the moment. The golden one let out a soft roar, a tiny but proud sound that echoed through the trees. The emerald one flapped its wings and chirped, a joyful noise that seemed to celebrate the honor they had received. Rowan felt a surge of determination. Being their guardian was more than an honor. It was a responsibility that he could not take lightly. He knelt and whispered to the cubs, "We've come far, and this is only the beginning. Together, we will face whatever challenges come our way." The Emperor nodded once, approvingly, before turning to leave. "I shall observe from afar," he said. "But remember, the world is watching. Your courage and loyalty will inspire those who hear of your deeds. And the dragons, they will remind all who see them that even the smallest, most innocent beings can hold great power when protected by those who are brave and wise." As the Emperor's carriage disappeared into the distance, a profound silence settled over the glade. Rowan looked at the cubs, their eyes bright with life and trust. He realized that they had not only survived danger, they had grown stronger, and together, they had faced trials that tested both courage and heart. The forest, once a place of refuge, now felt like a stage for their future adventures. Rowan knew that challenges would come, rival kingdoms, ambitious nobles, and dark forces that would seek to exploit the dragon's power. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of quiet triumph. The cubs were safe, and he had proven that bravery, compassion, and wisdom could triumph even in the face of overwhelming odds. The golden cub nudged his hand, and the emerald cub hopped onto a low branch, practicing balance and flight. Rowan smiled, watching them with pride. Together, they had faced danger, outsmarted skilled intruders, and earned the respect of the Emperor himself. In the distance, the first hints of sunlight illuminated the mountains, casting long shadows and golden light across the forest. Rowan whispered softly, "We've done it, for now, but the world is wide, and the future is ours to shape." The cubs stirred, tiny wings flaring, eyes bright with curiosity and courage. Rowan stood, feeling a deep sense of purpose. He would protect them, guide them, and prepare them for the challenges ahead. Their journey was far from over, but they were ready. And somewhere, in the silent awe of the forest, the Emperor's words echoed. True courage lies not in power alone, but in heart, loyalty, and the courage to protect what is innocent. Rowan and the cubs had proven this truth, leaving the world, and the Empire itself, silent, humbled, and in awe. The forest seemed to whisper around them, carrying a promise of adventures yet to come. Rowan looked down at the cubs, feeling the bond they had formed. A bond stronger than fear, stronger than danger, stronger than any challenge the world could present. Together, they would face it all. The story ended for now, but the legacy of courage, wisdom, and compassion would echo far beyond the forest, inspiring all who heard it.